Pro Football Focus just dropped its quarterback rankings heading into the season of 2022. Where does Hendon Hooker lie on this list? It is not good. And to be completely frank, this list is absolutely trash. We'll go over it here on a Thursday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome into it. This is your Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. It's your go-to Tennessee Volunteers podcast each and every day, and it's brought to you by so many great sponsors, and I can't thank you enough for making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch on YouTube and wherever you find your podcast. I'm your host, Eric Kane. As always, you can find this podcast at _Kaner and at Locked On Vols, and we got a fun show to get into today. So if the cold open wasn't a good tease enough, I mean, we've got this. We are exiting the list season and we are getting into talking season, right? So we continue to get these lists in terms of, what's top 50 quarterbacks, top 50 head coaches, top 14 SEC head coaches, whatever the case may be. And then we're heading into media days next week to where everybody's going to be talking and talking and talking. And one of the final lists that we're going to go over, maybe the final list that we're going to go over heading into talking season, is from Pro Football Focus, who unveiled its college football preview guide, and it went ahead and rolled out its college football quarterbacks listings and rankings heading into the season of 2022. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about who the most important player for Tennessee football has been in the last decade. That was an article inspired by Saturday Down South. And then we'll get back into our starter spotlight to end the show, and we'll discuss the star position. But I might have been a little cold there in the cold open. I never like to, be rude. I never like to come at people. I do this. I am a part of a radio show. I write for VolQuest.com. I do this podcast each and every day. So I've got a lot of takes, and sometimes I'm right. Sometimes I'm wrong. It's just part of the business, right? And, I wouldn't want anybody coming to me and saying that, my theory or my take or my, whatever was just flat out stupid. So having said all that, and knowing where my heart is, this list from Pro Football Focus is just stupid, okay? And you guys know me. I am a Pro Football Focus guy, but what do I always say? Disclaimer. I say it every single time we get into those pro football stats, coming off a football game. I say it every single time we do it when talking about a player for starter spotlight. I say, hey, disclaimer, it's not everything, but it's something, right? So take everything with Pro Football Focus with a grain of salt, because they look at every little bit of detail, but they don't always know what the responsibility is for every single play on every single down or situation or for player. They could be coached up to be doing something completely different. So you always got to take it with a grain of salt. But with Pro Football Focus releasing this quarterback rankings list, and it is just something, guys. Quickly, I'll just go over some of the highlights, and then we'll break down just what is wrong with this list. Bryce Young, reigning Heisman Trophy winner, is at the top. I had somebody dive into the comment section on the show yesterday saying that I talked too much Alabama. I think he might have been confused by my 10 seconds, couple of sentences about Will Anderson Jr. yesterday, but sorry if this offends anybody that said comments here on the YouTube channel. But Bryce Young is at the top, and that's expected. He is the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. Caleb Williams is at 2. I don't agree with that. Spencer Rattler is at 3. I really don't agree with that. And then the guy that's, granted the Spencer Rattler of last year maybe, but he's actually got some stats to back it up, had a fantastic year last year. You got C.J. Stroud at 4th. C.J. Stroud, Ohio State quarterback who's being picked to win the Heisman, preseason favorites, top 5 draft pick likely next year's NFL draft. He comes in at 4th, behind Spencer Rattler and behind Caleb Williams. I completely disagree with all that. Sam Hartman of Wake Forest up there at number 5. Grayson McCall of Coastal Carolina is at 6. Brennan Armstrong of Virginia is at 7. Interesting little trio there. Dylan Gabriel of Oklahoma is at 8. Keaton Slovis, Tennessee's week 2 opponent at quarterback of the Pitt Panthers, he's at 9. And then Tyler Van Dyke of Miami is at 10. Okay, Hendon Hooker's still not been mentioned yet, but there hasn't been a whole lot of some other good quarterbacks mentioned either. We continue on. Talia Tagovailoa, however you say his name, Tua's brother from Maryland, is at 11th. LOL. Devin Leary of NC State's at 12. Clayton Tune of Houston is at 13. Malik Cunningham of Louisville's at 14. Aiden O'Connell, remember him from Purdue? Yeah, he's at 15. Here we go. Here's some SEC guy. Is it Hendon Hooker? No, it's not. Will Rogers of Mississippi State is at 16. All right. Jared Hall of BYU's at 17. The guy that you, myself, your mama, your cousin, your grandpa, we have all done just as much in terms of passing the football as this next guy has on the list, which is 0. None of us has ever attempted to pass in a collegiate football game before. Neither is Quinn Ewers. And Quinn Ewers may be the second coming, but he's never attempted a pass, a forward pass in Power 5 football or college football altogether. Nonetheless, the presumed Texas Longhorn starter comes in at 18. Oh, here we go, SEC. Here would be a good slot for Hendon Hooker. It's not. It's Will Levis. Will Levis of Kentucky comes in at 19. Tanner Mordecai of SMU comes in at 20. Jake Hayner of Fresno State comes in next at 21. We are 21 picks in here in terms of this list, and no Hendon Hooker, no KJ Jefferson. I mean, there's some good, no Cam Rising. There's some good quarterbacks that have been nowhere to be found here. We continue on. 2020 or 22 on this list is hilarious to me. You have the grouping, yes, the grouping of Miles Brennan, Garrett Nussmeier, and Jaden Daniels of LSU, all there at 22. How that's possible, I have no clue. And here at 23 is finally Tennessee's quarterback, Hendon Hooker. So, again, this is the top quarterbacks entering the 2022 season per Pro Football Focus. And Hendon Hooker comes all the way down at number 23. Hendon Hooker should be in the top 10 no matter what. You talk about a quarterback that was top 5 in quarterback rating last season, led the SEC in quarterback rating, was better than the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Bryce Young. Yeah, that being Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker, who, mind you, Pro Football Focus loves. Again, take it with a grain of salt. That's something, not everything. Pro Football Focus graded Hendon Hooker at 84.4 last year. That was his grade. It was the best offensive grade for Tennessee and the entire team, and that's the quarterback position, playing over 775 snaps. Incredible. Hendon Hooker had a 74.8% grade per Pro Football Focus in 2020 at Virginia Tech, 74.6 grade per Pro Football Focus at Virginia Tech in 2019, a 49.5% grade in 2018 at Va Tech, but he hardly ever played then, and jumped all the way up to 84.4% per PFF last season in 2021. Pro Football Focus loved him. Sure, he struggled in some of the bigger games in terms of this rating. You know, at against Alabama, 61.3. Against Georgia, 55.4. Against Florida, 58.6. But he pretty much balled out every other, anywhere else you look on the schedule. 71.5 against Tennessee Tech. Sure, that's Tech. 86.5 against South Carolina. 91.0 against Missouri. 86.0 against Kentucky. 91.1 against South Alabama. 69.3 against Purdue. Those are good grades. Pro Football Focus really loved them some Hendon Hooker last year. Yet, according to this list here, they have Tennessee starting quarterback down at number 23. I just don't get it. So that's abysmal to begin with. All right, we continue on. Some of the bigger names behind Hendon Hooker. 24 is Cam Rising, who didn't start the season, but ultimately came in and led Utah to a Pac-12 championship. KJ Jefferson of Arkansas, who should be a top 15 quarterback in this list, is at number 26. Zach Calzada is at number 28 for Auburn. He should be at number 58, in my opinion. Anthony Richardson of Florida is at 30. And, the list, Stetson Bennett. Again, you guys know that I'm hard on Stetson Bennett, but point of the matter is he just won a national championship, and he's the reason why in that game that Georgia won a national championship. He's at 34. So, where are we going to go wrong here? The biggest hiccup here for a Tennessee podcast is obviously Hendon Hooker coming all the way down to 23. Just inexcusable. The biggest hiccup overall on this list is that CJ Stroud is at number 4 and not at 1 or 2. I'll give you Bryce Young at number 1. CJ Stroud should be at number 2 no matter what. Spencer Rattler of South Carolina, what on earth is he doing all the way up there at number 3? No clue. And Tyler Evans at the starting lineup, when we discussed this on Wednesday morning, made a great point. Sam Hartman, if PFF is betting on him to duplicate the results that he did in his breakout season here in 2022, then why aren't you doing the same thing for Hendon Hooker all the way down to 23, right? Hendon Hooker broke out in 2021. So did Sam Hartman. If you're betting on Sam Hartman, why are you not betting on Hendon Hooker? That makes no sense. Tua's little brother at number 11 is just laughable. Quinn Ewers, number 18, has literally never attempted a pass, and he may be a great quarterback. I'm not saying he won't be, but just like Billy Napier in the SEC, literally never coached a game. Shane Beamer, Josh Heupel have coached games. They should be ranked ahead of Billy Napier in these offseason list seasons. And again, I know it's just for guys like me to talk about, but it is what it is. And the biggest thing about this whole situation that is just hilarious to me is that you've got the grouping. Pro Football Focus couldn't decide who's going to be the starting quarterback for LSU, but if it's Miles Brennan, sure, he's ahead of Hendon Hooker according to this list. If it's Garrett Nussmeier, sure, he's ahead of Hendon Hooker on this list. If it's Jaden Daniels, oh, sure, him too. I guess he's ahead of Hendon Hooker. You have a grouping of quarterbacks at number 22 because Pro Football Focus can't decide who's going to be the starting quarterback for LSU. You see that later on down the list with Ole Miss at 43 with Luke Altmaier and Jackson Dart. I mean, this is just hilarious to me. And again, most of these lists say, hey, this is what we're looking at here. This list, they're showing their work. We pick these guys because they do this well, this well, this well. The only note that this says on this list is that note this has nothing to do with pro potential. Show your work, PFF. This is atrocious. This might be the worst offseason list I have ever seen. At the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything. No one's paying attention to this except for, again, guys like me. And you guys, because you're listening to me for some reason, right? But this is just an abysmal list on so many different accounts. KJ Jefferson should be a top 15 quarterback. Hendon Hooker should be a top 10 quarterback at minimum in this list. Spencer Rattler should be out of the top 20. CJ Stroud should be at number 2 behind Bryce Young. Keaton Slovis should not be in the top 10. I mean, are you kidding me here? Are you serious with Keaton Slovis? He was not that good at USC. It's just, it's something, guys. I mean, if you guys haven't seen this list, I encourage you just to Google PFF quarterback rankings, college quarterback rankings, PFF, and see this list for yourself. It is something. So nonetheless, gave me plenty of ammunition to talk about here on a Thursday show. So hope you guys enjoyed it. And this is coming from a guy that uses PFF on the daily. This is just abysmal. This is an abysmal list. And quite frankly, they should come back and recount it. It was that bad. Got a question for you. Who has been the most important player for Tennessee football in the last decade? A couple of different names come to mind. I'll tell you what Saturday Down South says, and then I'll tell you what I have to say about it. That's coming up next here on Locked On Vols. But this episode is brought to you by Rockauto. The ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local auto parts chain store to suck up on all the parts that you may need. So why endure the often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning that comes from the person behind the counter while you wait, while they order the parts that only their computer, their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers and you have access to rockauto.com at home and right here in your pocket with your mobile device, right? Save time and money when using rockauto.com. Why spend up to 30 to 50, sometimes even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership when you can get them online from a family-owned business that's been serving it to do-it-yourselfers and professionals for over 20 years? The best part about rockauto.com, the prices are always so reliably low for every single customer. Right now, you can go explore their easy-to-use website today to find all the solutions to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or your truck. Right Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit my friends at rockauto.com. I want to welcome you guys back into Locked On Vols. And a quick NFL note, which NFL stars move the betting line the most? Starting July the 18th, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18th on Locked On NFL, wherever you find your podcast. And, of course, it's on YouTube, just like Locked On Vols, which is your first listen and your first watch on YouTube each and every day. All right, coming back in, guys, we got a topic inspired by Saturday Down South, and it's the most valuable player for each SEC program in the past decade. All right, they go through and they list all SEC teams. They give you the most valuable player for that team or for that program in the last decade. I agree with pretty much everything they put out here, except for one major one, and it's not the University of Tennessee. But first, let's start with the Big Orange, shall we? According to Saturday Down South, they list Derek Barnett as Tennessee's most valuable player, the program, over the past 10 years. Hard to argue, right? This is the quotation that they use for Derek Barnett. Here's their explanation. When I close my eyes and think about it, Think about a set and set it and forget a player. Barnett is, I don't know what that sentence says. When I close my eyes and think about a set it and forget it player. Oh, set it and forget it player. Okay, that's a phrase. Barnett is who comes to mind. I truly think that the 2017 team would have had much better chance to stop the bleeding if Barnett had stuck around for another year. Still, though, the guy managed to break Reggie White's career sacks mark in the final game of his career. He finished his 3-year career entirely as a starter with 52 tackles for loss and totaling 197 tackles from the defensive end position. He wasn't as physically gifted as someone like Myles Garrett, but what Barnett lacked is explosiveness. He made up for, gosh, I can't read today. I'm sorry. He wasn't the physically gifted as someone like Myles Garrett, but what Barnett lacked in explosiveness, he made up for it with technique and relentlessness. In the SEC, the guy had double-digit sacks in all 3 seasons. That's incredible. His 20.5 tackles for loss as a true freshman is one of the more underrated individual feats of recent memory. The position was loaded in the SEC, and Barnett didn't get a first-team all-conference love. The most stable period of the most Philip Fulmer era was the 3 years that Barnett was in Knoxville. That's not a coincidence. The most stable period of the most Philip Fulmer era was the 3 years that Barnett was in Knoxville. That's not a coincidence. That makes no sense because Philip Fulmer wasn't his coach. All right, sorry, there was a little weird wording. There were some typos in here. I'm reading this article from Saturday Down South, but nonetheless, they choose Derek Barnett. I do agree with that. Barnett was the best player that's ever come through here in the last 10 years, and it's not even close. I understand everyone's going to say Josh Dobbs, and that's a real good argument. Josh Dobbs creating something out of nothing a lot of the times. His all-purpose yards capabilities, being able to run, throw. He was a drafted player. Josh Dobbs would easily be number 2, in my opinion. And you can make the case, and I'll hear it for sure. And you may be right, and I may be wrong, that Josh Dobbs should be the one that comes in mind in this conversation. But Derek Barnett, when you break a record held by Reggie White in the SEC, when you are the 9th overall draft selection in your class, when you total 197 tackles in 3 seasons, 52 tackles for loss, 20 and a half TFLs as a true freshman, I'm going to give it to Derek Barnett. So Derek Barnett absolutely would be my answer. Josh Dobbs would be my number 2. The one thing I'll say about just Josh Dobbs is he didn't have a lot of offensive line protection in front of him consistently throughout his career. He had some good players up there, but consistently he was running all over the place a lot of times. But he had a whole lot of toys to play with. He had, Josh Malone. He had Alvin Kamara, Jalen Hurd. He had so many different players, Kroom. He had so many different players that he could rely on to go and catch passes for him or to rush the football. So Alvin Kamara, a lot of people have been saying he wasn't used enough at Tennessee to be in this conversation. Jalen Hurd, if he would have finished his career at Tennessee, potentially he would have been the make here. But for me, it's Derek Barnett, and that's what Saturday Down South agrees with as well. All right, let's go through the rest of the SEC and hear what Saturday Down South has to say about who their most valuable player was in the last decade. For Vanderbilt, Jordan Matthews. Well, that's a pretty easy one there, in my opinion. Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M. That's a no-brainer. At South Carolina, you'll have Jadeveon Clowney. Clowney was the best player in the country when he was at South Carolina, so that is very easily there. Matt Corral at Ole Miss. Yeah, I mean, who else would it be the last decade, right? McCluster, I believe, was he might be fringe, 10, 11 years ago, but Matt Corral is easily the one that I would say as well. Dak Prescott, again, who else at Mississippi State, right? It's not Will Rogers, it's Dak Prescott. Missouri, Drew Lock, again, who else? Maybe Tyler Beatty, but Drew Lock, it's definitely Drew Lock. Joe Burrow at LSU, well, of course, he came in and played All-American, football and won a national title. That's easy. So a lot of these are no-brainers. Kentucky's Josh Allen. Benny Snell should deserve some love here, but it is Josh Allen, the outside linebacker. Georgia's interesting. They go with Nick Chubb. Which defensive player do you want to pick in here? Which great running back do you want to pick in here? Nick Chubb is probably the one I would go with, but there are a whole lot of really, really good players you could have picked for Georgia, but they go with Nick Chubb, and it's kind of hard to disagree there. For Florida, they're gonna go Kyle Trask, and I think that's a no-brainer. The number 2 would have been Kyle Pitts, in my opinion, but Kyle Trask statistically and for Florida, it's so overshadowed because Alabama had such a dominant year in 2020. But what Kyle Trask did and what that Florida offense did was just incredible. and it's all wiped away. You know, all those records they broke and everything all wiped away because Alabama had another just Alabama type season. So Kyle Trask from Florida makes a whole lot of sense. Bigsby, or excuse me, not Tank Bigsby, Nick Marshall from Auburn. He led them to a BCS national championship game, so I guess I would agree with that. Remember, Cam Newton is not in this conversation because that was too long ago. And then Traylon Burks for Arkansas, that makes a whole lot of sense. So really, the only big bugaboo I have in this whole thing is when we get to Alabama and they list Jalen Hurts. What? I understand Jalen Hurts took you to 2 national championships, but buddy, you had Tua as a true freshman come in, or as a redshirt freshman, excuse me, come in and bail you out of one and win you a national championship. Then you lost your job to Tua. Then you transferred. I don't know who would be for Alabama because they've had so many dominant players, but I'll tell you one thing, it's not Jalen Hurts. That's the one I disagree with the most. You can go a couple of different directions with Georgia, but I agree with Saturday Down South that Tennessee's most valuable player in the last decade has been Derek Barnett, with Josh Dobbs probably going to be a close second. Let's get back into starter spotlight, shall we? Also, if you guys want to add a name in here, if you think it's Josh Dobbs, if you think it's Derek Barnett, if you think it's somebody else, the comment section on YouTube, @_Kaner, @LockedOnVols. Tweet me. Those DMs are open. Whatever you guys want. Hey, let's get into the starter spotlight. Who do I believe will get the start at the star position coming up here for this season? It is completely wide open. Completely wide open. One of the more intriguing battles in camp is forthcoming, and we're going to break it down a little bit here with starter spotlight, and I'll tell you who I'm going to shine on here in segment number 3. I want to get into Built Bar here and let you guys know about the new flavor, Coconut Brownie Chunk Puff. From the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You're probably tired. You probably tried, that amazing coconut brownie chunk bar. But guess what? Your friends at Built have given you coconut brownie chunk and the puffs treatment, man. That's amazing. That's right. The coconut brownie chunk Built Bar flavor that you love, and a delicious, chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. But stop drooling and listen up for a second. They are good for you. Low calorie, low sugar, high protein, and all of them are so delicious. Coconut brownie chunk puffs are the only here for a limited time. So right now, you need to go to Built.com to make sure you don't miss out. They're going to go fast because they taste so amazing. All the Built bars are made with good protein, which your body can absorb more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits as well. Eat something that tastes good and something that's good for you. Delicious coconut rich, sweet brownie, creamy marshmallow, all fantastic. Get it at Built.com. Order your box of coconut brownie chunk Built Puffs today. Go to Built.com, use that promo code LOCK15, and you're going to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off. That's all at Built.com. We've got a really fun show so far today. We've been discussing the atrocious quarterback list heading into the 2022 college football season from Pro Football Focus. Again, not trying to throw insults, but that list right there in segment 1 that we went over deserves all the insults in the world. So I'll just leave it at that. In segment 2 from Saturday Down South, the most important Tennessee football player of the last decade, I say Derek Barnett. So do they. What say you? And now here in segment 3, let's get into our starter spotlight. We don't know who is going to play the star position. Theo Jackson stepped in, played that star position at an all-conference level last season. Tennessee is losing that. His backup was Danico Slaughter, who saw a little bit of playing time, sure. He missed some time as well. Brandon Turnage is a guy that's played cornerback that slid over, played that against Missouri, the star position, was SEC Defensive Player of the Year, played it a little bit against Alabama, but ultimately has been, back and forth between star and corner. He is a guy who can play it, though, but we don't know if he can play it. We don't know if he will play it. Christian Charles is a guy that, is going to play somewhere, in my opinion, right? He is going to play somewhere, but is it really going to be corner, safety, or star? I don't think it would be star. I think it'd be more of the former two. So we'll have to see. What about a newcomer? What about Andre Turrentine? He can play it. We'll see if he can fit in there, maybe as a depth option, or maybe contending for that starting job in camp. What about Wesley Walker, though? Wesley Walker of Georgia Tech, who transferred to Tennessee during the offseason. This is the position that he played at Georgia Tech. And he has started the last 2 years. As a true freshman in 2019, played in 2 games, had 3 tackles, no big deal. In 2020, the COVID-shortened season, played in all 10 games, 48 tackles, 2 for loss. In he had 4 pass defenses back in 2020 as well. In 2021, 44 tackles, playing in 10 games. He had no interceptions and 2 pass defenses. So no picks in his college career so far. Maybe that'll come here at Tennessee. But Wesley Walker's a guy that has gotten better and better and better pretty much every single year. He took a little dip in terms of the PFF grade. Again, not everything, but something. According to Pro Football Focus, Wesley Walker graded out at a 48% in limited time, only 14 total reps in 2019, 66.7% in 2020, and 62.3% in 2021. He played very, very well against Northern Illinois, 77%. Played really, really well against Miami, 74%. Really well against Virginia Tech, 72%. Played really well against Duke, 70% last year. Struggled against Clemson, 49%. Struggled against Kennesaw State, 53%. Struggled against Pittsburgh, 51%. And struggled against Virginia, 49%. But overall, his grade was 62.3, and that is, according to their metric, considered a backup player. So he wasn't, blitzing anybody. He wasn't playing at an all-conference level, but Wesley Walker is a guy that has a whole lot of experience, and he's a guy that has played that position for Georgia Tech the last 2 years, covering some of the best wide receivers in the SEC from the slot. So that would be kind of who I would pencil in as the starter at star. That does not mean he will start. That is just my educated guess right now. Things can also change. You can get into camp, somebody can get hurt. You can get into camp, and hell, they might move Trayvon Flowers a star and move Wesley Walker back to safety to get some more reps. I don't know. We know that Trayvon Flowers repped a little bit of star before spring and a little bit during spring. We know that Danico Slaughter, that's pretty much his home position. We know that Christian McDonald has, Tamari McDonald, has repped there just a little bit. But ultimately, that is a major question mark. Could it be Wesley Walker, a newcomer from Tennessee, a guy that played high school football with Tyler Barron, who is, a family member of Tyler Barron, a Middle Tennessee guy that went to Georgia Tech? Could it be Wesley Walker, who is Tennessee's new nickelback, that fifth defensive back? I don't know. We'll have to see. Christian Charles is going to play somewhere. I don't know if it's going to be star. I like him to play maybe even a cornerback. I don't know. He played cornerback a lot during spring, and was primarily a safety by trait. Started that Missouri game before going out with an injury, and then kind of missed a lot of the times, a lot of the games moving on towards the end of the season. But my bet, if I'm penciling it in, would be Wesley Walker. But honestly, it's a crapshoot. We have absolutely no clue, what's going to happen this season and in camp on who is going to play that game. You look at some of the stat sheets in terms of tackles. He had a season high of 6 tackles twice in back-to-back games. Wesley Walker did at Duke and at Virginia. There in the month of November, or really late October, I guess. Had 5 tackles in the season opener against Northern Illinois. And, missed tackle percentage is not very high. He only missed a couple of tackles on the season, 13. But his missed tackle percentage is really, really low. And his coverage grade is a 59.5 on the season, so that's got to be a little bit better. So who knows? I don't know. It's just a guy that makes a whole lot of sense to me in terms of who could maybe start at that starter spot, at that star position. So we will see. Again, I'll say it like I've said it the last 2 days, and I've said it countless times on this podcast here in this offseason. Can one of these veterans in the secondary, can they take a Theo Jackson-like investment off the field, meaning training your body, watching tons of film, taking care of yourself in the training room, taking care of yourself with a nutritional plan? Can you make the investment off the field that allows you to take a step on the field like Theo Jackson did last year? We'll find out. I think Wesley Walker, though he's new to the program, first year in the Big Orange, he can take that type of step as well, potentially, looking like, or just looking back on his stats and like kind of like what he's done throughout his college career. Because again, he is a veteran, and he will have every opportunity to earn that star spotlight, or to earn that star position in fall camp. So Wesley Walker, your starter spotlight here today at the star position. We will move on to quarterback, and we will see what happens there. That's another position that honestly we just have no clue about heading into fall camp. But hey, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Vols. Had a whole lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today and making Locked On Vols your first listen. Now make Locked On SEC your second listen. Chris Gordy does an awesome job taking you around the SEC in 30 minutes or less each and every day. And if you're not subscribed to Locked On SEC for your second listen, of course, behind Locked On Vols your first listen, you need to go ahead and do so, because he and I both will be at SEC Media Days along with some other guys from around the conference, and he's going to put out some great content. So if you're an SEC football fan, I encourage you to subscribe and follow Chris Gordy as well. But go ahead and make sure Locked On Vols is that first listen each and every day. Guys, thank you so much. Could not do it without you. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. We will tie a bow on this show for the week on Friday. John Garcia coming up on tomorrow's show. We'll talk recruiting. Really, really looking forward to that. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys.